I've always said that I love The Big Bang Theory. I grew up watching it with my brother, laughing aloud, having an amazing time, and I have so much nostalgia and good memories associated with that show. But I had it brought to my attention recently that it's sexist, or at least has some sexist elements. And these were things that I sort of noticed when I was first watching it, but I was honestly too young to fully register what I was seeing because it is subtle. And also when you're enjoying something that much, you don't tend to be looking at it with a really analytical lens for everything wrong with it. But upon a rewatch recently, I found out some pretty sinister, worrying things about misogyny, the pressure on women to be perfect, and I wanted to share some of these revelations with you. Today we're discussing masculinity, geek culture, and how the character of Penny was treated primarily. It's a disclaimer because I know some of you who love this show are ready to be in the comments like, oh Serena, how can you not like this show? It's amazing, like you can't criticize it. Almost every show I've watched has made a mistake at some point. Either it's done something sexist, racist, offensive in some way. A lot of media will have things wrong with it. You can still enjoy it, but you can also criticize it and say, I don't like A, B, and C. People nowadays are losing the ability to think analytically about things, and we're losing the nuance in discussion. It's so black and white, and when you add in social media echo chambers and us looking for things that reaffirm our beliefs, then we assume that anything outside of that is wrong. I can love The Big Bang Theory and still acknowledge that it's sexist, and there's a lot of things that made me uncomfortable as a woman that I don't like about it. The socially awkward group of males in The Big Bang Theory seem pretty unthreatening to us because they're nerdy. Howard, Rouge, Sheldon, Leonard, they're hardly what you think of when I say alpha male. A video recently came up in my recommended from the pop culture detective who put a really good label to this, and he said that they get off on the grounds that they are adorkable, even though what they are doing is offensive or hurtful or misogynistic. The problem with women having to call sexism out all the time, especially as reviewers, is we're told that we're overreacting, and so it was really refreshing to see a guy criticize it and name it for once. And that's why I'm really happy the pop culture detective made that video, because it saved me doing it initially, and that video got a ton of views and I was like, that's nice. The video's creator Jonathan really reframed how I looked at the show, so I will link it down in the description as well because I found it really interesting, a lot of the stuff he talked about. He argues that adorkable misogynists are male characters whose geeky version of masculinity is framed as both comically pathetic and endearing. It's their status as nerdy nice guys that lets them get off the hook for a wide range of creepy, entitled, and downright sexist behaviors, and they refuse to take no for an answer or often ignore the basic tenets of consent. Because they're lacking awareness in social cues and they don't know what they're doing, this means that their actions are seen as more excusable. It reminds me of a movie I watched when I was younger, which is a teen movie called Sleepover, which feels like a fever dream now I think about it. But what's so crazy is that movie is aimed at teenage girls, but it sends a really harmful message because it has these nerdy, geeky guys who ride on skateboards and are awkward, and so we're set up to root for them because they're like the underdog and things aren't in their favor. And they're kind of awkward around girls, so it's easy to let them off the hook. But in fact, what they're doing is not okay, because they're wanting to meet some cute girls, hang out with them, and they climb through the main character's window into her bedroom. She's not there, so they violated her privacy. They're basically breaking and entering without permission, and then they start snooping through her drawers, find her underwear, and it's framed as a joke, but the whole thing is incredibly creepy and inappropriate. And yet often in movies like this, the guys being odd and off-putting, the girl then, the popular girl, is seen as shallow and vain for not giving him a chance because he's not conventionally attractive, when in fact often the problem is that he's just creepy and not charismatic. So it's no wonder that she wouldn't want to go out with him. And this is kind of the same way in The Big Bang Theory, and as much as I enjoy watching this show, you do have to ask yourself, Can you ever see yourself as the bully when you yourself have always been picked on because you're a nerd and you were bullied in high school like these guys were in The Big Bang Theory? Like 100% Rouge and Leonard, they were not the cool kids in high school, but that doesn't give them an excuse or justify them being sexist or picking on other people. I was really nervous and conflicted about covering this topic because this is actually something I know where a lot of people are going to get pissed off, because this show has so much nostalgia, such a massive fan base, so many people who will die on the hill that it's perfect and flawless. It's complicated for me because I think this show is so funny. There's so many things that I do enjoy about it. And also, it's not like the sexism is necessarily shoved down your throat every single episode. You would have to watch quite a few in order to get a taste of what's going on. So before we get into it, I just want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Atlas VPN. This is an app which I found insanely useful for watching my favorite shows and movies from anywhere in the world. For example, at one point I was wanting to watch Skins or Pretty Little Liars, but they were both in the UK and I was traveling at that time, so I was overseas, but Atlas VPN fixes this problem for you. On unlimited devices with one subscription, you can change your location to access more shows. And this was an absolute game changer for me, especially as someone who loves movies and TV, as I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. And it also protects your devices from malware and allows you to save money online while shopping. This is my first ever sponsorship on this channel, but I chose to work with Atlas VPN because I always want to stay true to myself and what's authentic, and I will only ever work with brands and companies that I genuinely like and believe in. You can grab their summer deal for just $1.83 per month plus 3 months extra, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can go to my description or pinned comment to access this, or visit get.atlasvpn.com/Serena, and that's with a capital S on Serena. You can join 6 million other users worldwide, so again, check it out in the description. And thank you so much to Atlas VPN for sponsoring this video. So let's get back to the content. When Penny enters a comic book shop for the first time, every single guy in there stops and stares and makes her feel awkward, which is a little bit silly actually.
Aw, what a cute little store. Everybody's staring at me.
Don't worry, they're more scared of you than you are of them.
Unlikely.
Because there is some exclusion that happens in real life for sure, where women say they like video games and guys don't believe them, or whatever the case may be. But The Big Bang Theory takes it to another extreme, because I seriously doubt in real life guys would be that shocked to see a woman in like a comic book store. So the show is a bit out of touch with reality, but to a certain extent this does happen in real life, where it's really surprising to people that a girl would have those interests. But it's another level in The Big Bang Theory. Like, they're shocked that a girl would know the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek, let's say, which is just ludicrous because many women will know the difference. But often what they're doing isn't very nice, and they're not very inclusive towards women because they're part of this geek culture. These are our interests. Women aren't included in that. And I've never talked about geek culture on my channel before because it's a very specific thing. It's like a subculture of enthusiasts traditionally associated with more quirky interests like Japanese animation, sci-fi, video games, Comic-Con, and that's the sort of thing that our main characters in The Big Bang Theory enjoy. But there's an assumption, which is sexist, that the default geek is male, which is not always true because women can like all of those things. I mean, I personally don't, but many women do. Many women like Star Wars and Star Trek and video games. Queer, marginalized, disabled people find even less representation. But that's another rabbit hole, another day, another video. On a separate note, I find it odd that they make the main characters out to be these super nerdy, undesirable guys who no woman wants to date, in particular Leonard, because actually he's a conventionally nice looking guy who's charismatic and hardworking, and many women find those qualities extremely attractive. In fact, I'd say Leonard's only downside is that he's a bit socially awkward and isn't the best dressed. The male nerds are the butt of the joke, not just the perpetrators. It's not like they're romanticized. They are sexist or disrespectful towards women, and it literally fires right back in their face and it doesn't work out. For instance, Howard, there's a running joke that he just can't land a girl because he comes across as so unappealing to women, and he has no charm and he doesn't know what he's doing. So the show is self-aware that Howard is a creepy loser. It knows he is, and it makes fun of that. And all the women in the show, you could argue, are far more charismatic, healthy-minded, balanced individuals. The issue comes in when, as the pop culture detective talked about, the guy's nerd status is used as an opportunity to deny them of any responsibility for their bad behavior, any punishment, any accountability whatsoever. In fact, sometimes we're meant to feel bad when they're rejected. A perfect example is Howard getting all depressed after Penny rejected him sulking around, and eventually Leonard guilt-tripping Penny into apologizing to Howard, even though rightfully she'd stood her ground and told him off. Now apparently it's her fault, so she goes to talk it out with him. He tries to kiss her, again showing that he's learned nothing and isn't reading the social cues, and so she punches him in the face. Now, was it funny? Yes, admittedly it was. Some of Howard's behavior at points was literally illegal, so I shouldn't be excusing that. This is where it becomes a bit insidious. It's not just like all the geeks are nice, well-meaning, and then you've got Howard as the funny, creepy comic relief. No. All of the men are either perpetrators or enablers. Not a single one of them you could classify as like a good guy, good feminist man. No. Leonard is an enabler. Like, he doesn't do shit to be the voice of moral reason, to teach them anything. With Rouge, when he's drunk, he says the most awful stuff.
I'm very comfortable here. Penny dear, why don't you shoot another silver bullet my way?
Get one yourself.
Ooh, somebody's been taking bitchy pills.
But then it's framed as endearing social anxiety because he turns back into his normal self again once he's sobered up and he's mute and too scared to talk to women. And then Howard is like the creep who secretly is sweet and just wants to be loved if only a good woman would come into his life. For instance, Rouge had literally convinced Penny that they'd slept together rather than telling her the truth from the get-go, which is what he should have done. In fact, he didn't really seem to care about telling her the truth. He only did it when his relationship with Leonard was in jeopardy and a few other factors, but he wasn't just doing it to put Penny's mind at rest. And Rouge is arguably the nicest out of all the guys and the best guy character overall with the best intentions. And he also has the most feminine attributes out of all of them. He likes the most feminine activities, but it's framed as something shameful and embarrassing that the other guys make fun of, when in fact he is the most in touch with his masculinity because he's comfortable embracing his feminine side as well. But the show doesn't really make that distinction clear.
See ya, boys. We are going drinking.
Wait, can I come with you? My character died.
Sorry, Raj, it's girls' night out.
Maybe another time.
Okay.
Come on.
Girls' night, girls' night.
Because Sheldon can get away with saying anything, he says awful stuff all the time. Sometimes it's multiple derogatory comments in one episode. Like, a woman is like a warm egg salad on a summer's day, full of eggs and only appealing for a short time. Oh, do you want to know another reason why men are better than women? And he'll just constantly say this stuff that's actually kind of mean. At one point, Penny is getting dressed and Sheldon's her friend, so she asks him not to look and he says that he won't, and then he does, and then he says the hero always looks, which is a very common thing with the male gaze in movies and shows, where it should be a compliment apparently that the guy is checking out a woman and watching her because she's so beautiful, but actually it's insulting and an invasion of her privacy, because this is a guy that's her friend that she should trust, and he's not listening to her and he's crossing that boundary. Which gets me into the women of the Big Bang Theory, Amy, Bernadette and Penny primarily, although there are other women in the show who are more minor characters. And it's fascinating to me that the more logical, sciencey women interested in STEM subjects are portrayed as badly dressed, glasses. It seems like the show can't wrap its head around women being logical, sciencey, ambitious, and also like beautiful and sensual and traditionally feminine. It's like, no, you need to pick, you need to be like frumpy or beautiful and dumb. I actually know a girl who's so intelligent. I met her at uni, but she was doing like maths and science at A levels, and when she walked into class on the first day, the whole room was full of guys. She was the only one who'd chosen to do those subjects because the other girls were doing like English and art. And when she walked in, one of the teachers said to her,
"Oh, you in the right class? Like, oh, if you're meant to be in English, that's down the hall."
So he made this gendered assumption that she wouldn't be in his class, which is really interesting because actually she's incredibly intelligent and beautiful. This show doesn't seem to understand women, and that was even more obvious to me in the Disneyland episode where the girls are already excited to get dressed up as Disney princesses and they all want to be Cinderella for some reason.
Guess it would be fun to be Cinderella.
Oh, I want to be Cinderella too.
Yeah.
We can't all be Cinderella.
No girl wants to dress up as Cinderella for Disneyland. Maybe a small percentage, but Cinderella is, I swear, one of the least popular Disney princesses. Like, I love Cinderella, but she's not the first princess that comes to mind when I think of who I'd want to dress up as. I say as I'm literally dressed like Cinderella. Two of the female leads who played Amy and Bernadette were initially paid much less than the other cast members, but at this point, I'm so used to the huge gender pay gap in Hollywood that this doesn't even come as a surprise to me, unfortunately. But if we start off with Penny, here's a question. Can you tell me Penny's last name? Nope, that's right, because they never gave her one, not in the 8 years that she was on the show. From the off, she's portrayed as a stereotypically dumb, hot girl next door type who's almost a cool girl. Like, she'll go fishing with the guys and she likes sports and she likes the outdoors. But as we get to know her more, she ends up being a brilliant character. And I think the show really nailed it with the presentation of Penny, which is why I'm trying to get the point across that it's not all bad. I'm not here just shitting on the show saying, oh my god, it's so awful. Like, no, they did a great job with her character as a whole, and she's so lovely and feisty and snarky, and we get to see how confident she is, and it's like she's the it girl, the girl who is always favored, who always, like, she has lucky girl syndrome. She's just winging it in life, and I just love that for her. I think she's got such a great energy. She's the kind of girl I would want to be friends with, to be honest. And I love how she forms this almost motherly relationship with Sheldon and isn't afraid to call him out when she needs to. But there were also some serious issues in her portrayal. Her smarts are constantly compared to the men's as a joke, that she's not as smart as the rest of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Given your community college education, I encourage you to ask me as many as possible.
Which I found really sad, because sure, maybe she's not as academic as them, but there's not just one type of intelligence, and Penny could be very emotionally intelligent and creative. Okay, she was a pretty terrible actress, but she had lots of other skill sets. However, she eventually does go to college, but not for herself to further her prospects. She does it because she's dating Leonard, who she considers this super smart scientist, and she wants to feel on his level, but she doesn't do it for herself. We're praising her for being confident and sexy and alluring, but then the show makes a point of constantly joking at her for sleeping with guys and being a slut. It's like, okay, she knows she's hot, she knows how to use it, but then when she actually goes out there and dates some guys, you're almost degrading her for it.
Go on many dates? Yeah, I wouldn't say many. A few.
And it seems to tie into the real life harassment that the actress experienced from fans of the show who were slut shaming her or just being mean towards her in general. people are constantly praising her curvy, beautiful body, and she's dressed in clothes that show and accentuate her figure, which is more on like the sporty side. But then she's mocked for being too big and too muscly, like musclier than the guys and having broader shoulders, or just having some extra padding. But that's ridiculous because you want her to be curvy, so of course she would have some extra curves, and she works out, she looks great. Why are we even pointing to or criticizing her body if she's happy with it? And then if she was, let's say, more thin, then you would say, oh, she doesn't have an ass, like she looks like a little boy. So it's as if women can never win. And she also didn't fit the beauty standard when this show came out, which was tall, lithe, willowy, model-esque body types, and she's shorter and curvier. It's vaguely unsettling because she's meant to be in her 20s, Kaylee was like 22 when she was cast, but the guys are meant to be older than her, and that's a weird power dynamic that they're all lusting after her aside from Sheldon, and she's coming around to the apartment all the time. They're like older than her, she's still, okay, she's not a teenager, she's legal and everything, but she's still a young woman who isn't maybe as sure and secure in herself. Like, she's still under the age of 25. And it's a little bit odd when you consider her ongoing romance with Leonard, but he was 32, the actor, when he was cast, and she's like 10 years his junior. The power dynamic becomes more bizarre when you consider that she's struggling financially in the beginning of the show. So Leonard is paying for her food, her TV, her bills, and that's why she's keeping him on side. So she is dependent on him in that sense. And rather than the show saying, how sad is it that women are put in these scary positions where we need to depend on men at all, instead it's more turned around to criticize Penny for basically cruising through life so easily. And you don't know, is he doing this because he genuinely cares about her and just wants to show that he appreciates her presence and he wants to help her out from the goodness of his heart? Or is he doing this because he literally wants to get in her pants? That would be a really unattractive thing to do, and I'm hoping it's just that he cared and wanted to help her out, but who knows? I actually like them as a couple later on in the show, and I think they're cute and they make sense together, but it's important to consider these things. There's a very strange narrative the writers push that if you're attractive, it's kind of unfair as a woman because you have pretty privilege and you get all this free stuff. And yeah, I'm not denying, of course, pretty privilege is a thing. I've experienced it myself, but there's also so much shit that comes along with it that's not talked about. The show is really pushing on Penny to reflect on this, and is she using them as if there's some moral lesson she can take away from this, when in fact, the blame should be 50% on the guys as well, because Leonard is the one choosing to pay for this. It's his money, he can do what he wants with it, and I think he's a grown man. Like, he is fully capable of making his own decisions. He has autonomy, and he's choosing to spend that money on her at the end of the day. The patriarchy already hurts women in so many ways. Maybe Penny was thinking, okay, I'm desperate, like, what can the patriarchy do for me? And the show again does not really go hard enough in addressing how uncomfortable it is as a woman when you're depending on a guy to manage your finances or pay for things for you. I remember one time, story time everyone, I was on a date with a guy. He knew that he wasn't going to get what he wanted from me necessarily. He paid for my drink, and I thought that was very nice of him. It was like $5. And then as we were leaving, he seemed kind of almost annoyed that he had to pay for my drink, and he made a comment like,
oh, you know what they say, I've paid for you, so you've got to give me something back in return.
And I was confused. I was like, give you what back? And he was like,
oh, your body.
And I was like, oh my god, are you serious? And I was so offended. And he was like,
oh, I'm joking.
He so wasn't joking. Like, it was not a joke. And that's what I hate, is when someone does something because they feel obligated to, but attached to it is this expectation that you should therefore give something back. So a guy could literally think that paying for your drink is equivalent to you sleeping with him, which it's not. Those two things are not of equal value. Needless to say, it was an extremely awkward conversation from there. And if Leonard wants to go and pay for Penny or help her out with her bills, who's to say that he shouldn't do that? And who's to say that she shouldn't let him? But it did create a power dynamic that wasn't so great. Penny went also from being a bit of a classic sitcom bimbo to being a really successful salesperson, but she didn't feel entirely satisfied in her career. She was drinking a lot, and even with her ending in the finale, I wasn't fully happy with that either. I felt like she deserved better. Penny has always been conflicted about being a mum. She wasn't sure if that was in the cards for her, even though Leonard wanted them, she didn't know. But at the end of the show, she ends up getting pregnant, literally accidentally, because she was drunk, and the show makes this into a joke without addressing how messed up it is, because Leonard made it sound like she just came home, she was drunk, and he says that she like threw herself on him. No, she hadn't. She just suggested that they do it, and he didn't use protection. She was also drunk, so consent is extremely blurry at best. And so she ends up having motherhood thrust upon her, forced into her life when she didn't want it. And I'm so sick of shows forcing motherhood on characters who didn't want it and then forcing them to keep the baby, go through with it, even though it's like not at all what they'd planned. As for Amy, her portrayal wasn't much better, even though I think she's a great character. She's so funny and just adorable and sweet. There's a lot of issues there. Like, for one, her hitting on Penny constantly in a way that made Penny uncomfortable and that never being properly addressed. And also her fitting so much into the stereotype of the nerdy female scientist. And with Bernadette, it's really not that different. She's basically there to replace Howard's mother and become this nag. And even though she is so intelligent, because she's tiny with a really squeaky voice, it's almost made into a joke that undermines how intelligent she really is. It's so funny and confusing though, because when the show wants to nail it, it really does. Like, whenever Amy wanted to have a makeover and take better care of her appearance or do something different with her appearance, the show framed it as a really nice positive thing and criticized Sheldon and positioned him as being in the wrong for not complimenting her enough or being nice to her. The show acknowledges that while she's not the stereotypical conventional Hollywood beauty, she is beautiful in her own way and should embrace it and should be proud of it. I also thought they did an excellent job with portraying how, although Bernadette is the smallest out of all the girls, she's also the most feisty and powerful and intimidating. Howard only has a master's degree and Bernadette has more credentials than he does and then gets a higher paid job. The women have also grown so much since their introduction in the beginning of the show, and by the end they have formed friendships with each other independent of their love lives. They're not just there to be attached to their partners, they have their own thing going on, and I love that for them. Just a quick pause for a second, everyone. I wanted to mention this earlier. So I have a Patreon now, so the link's in the description if you do want to support me on there for as little as $2 a month. It's literally a no-brainer. It's very affordable to see extra content from me. I'm doing a Pretty Little Liars series over there and all sorts of fun stuff, so you can check it out. Also, if you just want to support my channel more so I can do YouTube full time. But continuing with what I was saying, The Big Bang Theory has its issues, but it's crazy how the problems on the show are not that different from real life. For example, being a woman in STEM and struggling with that and feeling excluded, or being a woman who has geeky interests and feels like there's not a place for them to share that. And these nerdy guys like Howard, Sheldon, they're so accurate to guys you may meet in real life who feel victimized, who feel mistreated because they were nerdy and maybe didn't have many friends growing up. But now, rather than that making them more compassionate and wanting to sympathize with, let's say, women who've gone through their own struggles, it makes them nasty and turn into perpetrators themselves who have such fragile egos and wounded masculinity that they take it out on other people, or they're just resentful that no girl wanted to date them. But you shouldn't exclude people just because you were excluded. And I don't like that this show relies on sexist racist or hurtful jokes and comments to be funny, or making fun of disabled people or blind people. It's just not nice. I was looking through all the writers of the show. There was like 23 of them, and only 4 of those were women, which is not a surprise to me. In order to write women in a sensitive way, there's a higher chance of doing it right if you have more representation with more female writers themselves. Of course, women can have internalized misogyny and be sexist too, but that's not the point. You should still strive for equal numbers. The show was created by Chuck Lorre, who also was behind 2.5 Men, which was a really sexist show, so it's no surprise that I'm noticing similar elements in The Big Bang Theory. Of course, the issue isn't just really that there's sexism, it's that this goes so largely unaddressed. Therefore, the implication is that sexism isn't that big a deal or not that harmful because there's no need to really dive into it and tackle it. It's just like, ugh, aren't these guys being so silly and stupid? Anyway, let's move on. But the weird thing about the show is it does have quite a mean-spirited tone at points, because it's not always particularly nice to the geeks either, and it picks on them a lot. Or when other male characters bully Rouge and Sheldon and Howard, it's implied that the guys deserve to be bullied and picked on or given a wedgie because they're arrogant, entitled jerks, and so this is like their karma. But actually, bullying someone in any context is never justified. But despite my complicated feelings and my genuine annoyance around some of these topics, the show still has credit. Like, it has such a big fan base. It ran for so many seasons. I know so many people are very attached to it. It's very bingeable. It's got a very addictive quality to it. It's a really easy watch. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's not funny, it's only funny because there's a laugh track. I disagree with that. I thought a lot of it was really funny. But The Big Bang Theory never dismantles clearly that sexism is wrong and has a really self-aware attitude in that sense. Not at all. It assumes that the audience will just somehow know that sexism is wrong. And so sexism is like this matter-of-fact, casual thing. So thank you for watching, and let me know your thoughts. And remember to check out Atlas VPN in the description because it is a limited time offer for the deal, so you want to get in quick. Follow my social media, and I will see you guys for my next video.